So today I want to talk about VaynerMedia. It's a prevalent company here in New York City, but it may be even more prevalent on YouTube. Gary Vaynerchuk, a very popular, prominent figure in the business niche of YouTube, probably up there with Grant Cardone and Tai Lopez. But of course he has VaynerMedia. But what does VaynerMedia actually do? And that's what I want to dig into, because I have a tendency, like, when you live in New York City and you work in media, you bump into kind of everybody, just like, Michael Keller from the New York Times, call me, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, so, the New York Times, I don't really think anything of it. Same with Gary Vaynerchuk, in full disclosure. We've DM'd on Twitter. I've been in the office a few times, talked about stuff. I actually did, a video for VaynerMedia many years ago when VaynerMedia was much, much smaller. I was just a college dropout in Kansas. I remember I made a video or two for them, and I think one of my very first checks was from VaynerMedia. I think it was for $600. But that's all beside the point. What I actually want to talk about is, what is VaynerMedia, and is VaynerMedia, how does VaynerMedia make money? How does Gary Vaynerchuk actually make money? And there's a couple interesting facets to VaynerMedia. One is that it's a, advertising company, right, that's supposed to focus on digital and social marketing and, for the digital age. And it's had a couple big partners for a long time, like GE has been a big one. I think it probably accounts for a large percent of their revenue, along with a few beer companies and some other, standard big firms that wanted to get into digital and social marketing and do a lot of paid media. So in some ways, VaynerMedia is a very traditional advertising firm that takes money and develops media or pieces of content, and then it takes ad buys to take a bunch of money from GE. GE will say, hey, we have $10 million. We don't know how to get our brand across to millennials, and VaynerMedia says, oh, we know how to do it. We'll put it on Snapchat and we'll do certain types of tweets. And so that's a standard, very obvious way that VaynerMedia makes money. And I was looking at their back end books, and they seem to make around $200 million in revenue currently. Now, something interesting about VaynerMedia is it doesn't seem to have ever raised any private funding. It never had a Series A round. It wasn't private equity. It wasn't venture backed. But is it profitable? I don't know. The interesting thing about VaynerMedia, as I was just looking at the way their website now operates, is that while they do every single thing, an advertising agency offers, any sort of creative service, and I now think they actually have a production company out in Long Island, although I'll be curious to see what kind of media they create. They're not really a publisher. They're not like Vice or Vox. They're not out there making, editorial content. They're not like BuzzFeed making, goofy, we try this videos. So they're much more like what you think of a Mad Men advertising company. But what's more interesting that I find is that VaynerMedia's real money-making ability might be in that, I can't tell, it seems like it's a quasi-arm for a different company called VanyerRSE, which is a merging of Gary Vaynerchuk, VaynerMedia, and RSE, which is a private equity firm, private equity fund that invests in money in a lot of digital media startups, a lot of Series A rounds, and a lot of seed funding. And VaynerMedia itself has also acquired a few companies, I think Pure Wow, and they recently acquired Micmac, which is an interesting little company in Brooklyn. They didn't acquire it, they invested in, my mistake. Anyway, Micmac's a digital media company in Brooklyn that specializes in building a thing that integrates onto Instagram and Snapchat about how if somebody's showing, oh, check out, this lavalier mic thing, blah, 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 this is an Instagram thing, it'll click up and it'll be an easy way to purchase whatever this is. And so if you actually look at VaynerMedia RSE, this separate company that Gary Vaynerchuk is a part of, that's a much more aggressive and probably profitable and lucrative company that Gary Vaynerchuk is behind. And I can't tell if VaynerMedia is an asset that VaynerRSE is invested into behind the scenes. I don't know, if the VaynerRSE, which is a private equity firm, uses, quote, VaynerMedia, as really VaynerMedia is just a kind of value add to the private equity firm that Gary Vaynerchuk is actually a part of. And so just imagine you're in Shark Tank, and it's Kevin Leary, whatever that guy's name, and Mark Cuban, and they each, the guy pitches the thing, and then each billionaire sits there and goes well, you should go with me, I'll give you the money, plus I have all these connections with, you know, the textile industry or the bathtub industry. And I don't know if VaynerMedia ultimately functions as an arm of the, you know, VaynerRSE private equity fund saying like, hey, we'll give you seed money for your app that's doing something cool on social media, and you should allow us to be a big investor because we have VaynerMedia and we have all the connections and can help you out and grow your company. And that's a pretty common way of like angel investors, VC funds, you know, saying, well, hey, not only do we bring money, but you should take our money because we also, here's our value added service. On top of that, VaynerMedia is very interesting in the sense that it's VaynerRSE, I should say. You know, the companies it's acquired and the way VaynerMedia operates as an advertising agency, and then also the companies that VaynerMedia has invested into, I think it actually did acquire PureWow, is if it starts to buy publishing companies, whether it be like, I don't know, PureWow I think is like a female magazine. I could be wrong on this. But if they start to acquire publishers, right, VaynerMedia does, and then they get paid media ad buys from GE or Unilever or whomever, does that then incentivize VaynerMedia to like funnel, you know, their ad buys and their spends like onto the publishers that they now own or they've invested in? Kind of like, let's say you're working in the medical field and you go and you have your arm broken and you go to your local family doctor and he says, oh yeah, you know, your arm is broken, you probably should see a radiologist. I know just the radiologist. And your family practice doctor refers you to his buddy who's a radiologist, and because he knows like, oh, how about my buddy, the radiologist, he'll get a little money and kickback, rather than saying, oh yeah, just go see any radiologist you want, which you can actually do in the medical field, even though nobody ever tells you. You don't have to see, I mean, the doctor that the family practice or whoever, you know, whatever GP, general practitioner, tells you, whatever specialist you have to see, you don't actually have to go see, you know, the doctor they recommend. You can see any specialist you want. You can even go to a different hospital, you know. So, and I'm talking about doctors, not talking about health insurance and what the health insurer may say. Anyway, tangent, looping all the way back around. I think the way Gary Vaynerchuk really makes money, though, is not so different than, you know, not so different than people like Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez. And as much as Ty Lopez and Grant Cardone get ragged on for the kind of like selling of educational tools, you know, like, oh yeah, I'll sell you how to become rich and like take my mastermind class, my mastermind course, right? If you notice, if you look at VaynerMedia, a lot of the service they offer are basically mastermind classes. You can pay, I think I saw a service, you can pay $10,000 to have kind of a one-on-one meeting with Gary Vaynerchuk or his team, or they'll offer to kind of be your brand ambassador if you're looking to grow your Instagram following, or you're just kind of a wealthy person with some capital spend that wants to grow your following as an individual. He seems to be selling a lot of these educational services, and I think that's probably how Gary Vaynerchuk makes most of his, you know, liquid cash, his liquid capital, is by really using VaynerMedia as a funnel for his kind of mastermind classes and speaking events, right? That's how he makes his money, more so than VaynerMedia being particularly profitable. My guess is it's operating right at its revenue operating cost. Its burn rate is probably right at its revenue. And why, if you look at VaynerMedia's cycles, it's hired a bunch of people, fired a bunch of people, hired a bunch of people, fired a bunch of people based on the amount of business they thought they could bring in on a given, you know, Q1, Q4 basis. They're like San Francisco office, they hired a bunch of people and then let go everybody, because I think it was based on the assumption that they bring in, you know, X amount of revenue, and when they didn't, they just got rid of the people. So they're operating at a very close burn rate. So I don't think Gary Vaynerchuk's making very much money from VaynerMedia. He's simply using it as a tool, both as a value-added service to his private equity fund that he's a part of that he doesn't talk very much about, but he's actually invested in quite a few digital media companies throughout the years that could pay quite large dividends in the end, and uses VaynerMedia as a funnel to draw on, let's say, big fish that have money to spend on his kind of mastermind classes and courses and one-on-one time with him. So anyway, that's my takeaway from VaynerMedia. You know, is it a legitimate like business and service? Yeah. It has a office in the Hudson Yards, and they offer a full kind of creative suite that any advertising agency would offer. Are they any better than other advertising agencies? That's not for me to say. I will give them one interesting thing they've done, is they've been able to sign some nice contracts with, I think, like it was an alcohol company, Captain Morgan, I believe it was, and they also signed a contract with JP Morgan Chase to do voice for them. And in that case, they're actually, I believe, developing voice content. They're kind of the voice of record for JP Morgan Chase, and that's an interesting genre to move into for advertising agencies. I don't think many advertising agencies or even publishers have moved into that space, which is developing content around, off-platform distribution sites, so like Amazon Alexa or Siri or whatever Google's thing is. When you say like, hey, Amazon Alexa, what is, how do I mix this drink? And Amazon Alexa goes, oh, you make this drink by using Captain Morgan's X rum and this amount of salt, etc. That's some interesting moves by VaynerMedia and may pay dividends. But, how is Gary Vaynerchuk actually making his money? Actually, this little venture capitalist private equity firm that he's a big part of, and funneling VaynerMedia the large traffic that flows through VaynerMedia into his own little courses and talks. Anyway, that's just a thought about how Gary Vaynerchuk is actually making money, how VaynerMedia is actually operating. I'd be curious to see your thoughts. If you want to watch another video, click around. I hope you guys have a good one.